The vision, a world where all people live free of the burden of drug abuse. This is the Drug-Free America Foundation's Pathway to Prevention podcast, where we are committed to developing strategies that prevent drug use and promote sustained recovery. Thank you for not only tuning in, but your continued support and efforts to help make this world a better place. We hope you enjoy this episode. All right, listeners, welcome back to another episode of Pathways to Prevention. My guest today has built a vibrant community of people, and together they support each other and believe wholeheartedly that recovery is possible for anyone. By valuing and investing in the people who use their services, they're able to show a different side to addiction, a side which sees members start their lives afresh with new friends, stronger family links, and better prospects. They have the expertise to support people with a variety of problems such as a history of offending, mental health issues, homelessness, learning difficulties, and childhood abuse. Their services are free, and people can use them for as long as they want. That's what makes The Well different from other support providers. Now, The Well has been created and developed by ex-offender David Higham, and David has been in and out of prison since the age of 16 and was a drug user for more than 25 years. But with intensive support from the former Lancaster Castle prison, David began his recovery and has been drug-free for 11 years. Now, seeing a big gap locally in the support for people leaving prison with an addiction, David decided to set up The Well. And the first hub was launched in Lancaster in 2012. And further, 4 sites quickly followed. Now, The Well reflects David's vision of what recovery services should look like: inclusive, non-judgmental, inspirational, and effective. Looking forward to this conversation. And without further ado, welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. It's amazing to be here, and it's great to do this podcast with you and have a conversation.
Yes, indeed. Been looking forward to this conversation. And let's just jump right into it. Where in this world are you located?
I'm in England, the UK. By my accent, you'll be able to say I'm a Liverpudlian, I'm a Scouser. But I got released from prison in this local area, and I've located here. And also, I'm 17 years clean, and not 11. Them extra 6 mean a lot.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, then that is my mistake, pulling from the website, but we can definitely change that. So,
yeah, no worries.
Your story, what led up to you founding The Well, and the story of the Well itself is inspirational and fascinating. But for our listeners, could you share just a little bit about sort of what led up to The Well?
What led up to The Well? I think at the time, I was working in a number of services. So when I left prison, I volunteered in different services. I volunteered in second-hand shops, helping out and giving clothing away and selling clothing. But working in services and seeing how services was, I really didn't think we were creating the right space in order for people to recover. I felt we were too inward facing, and I'd worked my way up in services. So I went in. My first job was a support worker. I got promoted to key worker, where I was key working individuals. Then from there, I got promoted to recovery lead. Then I got asked to work somewhere else for a program manager. I got promoted to regional manager. So I'd gone through all the system in terms and developed within them addiction organisations, and I'd see people coming in time after time. It felt like we were like we would build a centre and then say to the community, "You come to us." We never really went to the community, and then we were guided and governed by these policies and procedures that restricted you in order to really build relationships with people. Because I believe the foundation of recovery, of most things, mental health, overcoming trauma, adverse childhood experiences, is the connections and the relationships we make with people. And I just didn't believe we were doing that. I went to my manager at the time and said, I've got this idea that we should open something in the heart of community, because we can't build a community around the service. We need to build a service around the community. So we need to be in the heart of the community. We need to be visible. And we need to do it outside of service hours, your normal Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. We need to be where the people are at. And the manager turned around to me and said, "We're not paying you to work on a Saturday and go out in the community. It's not happening." And it was like, I'm willing to give my Saturdays up in order to help people and be there. And they said no. And all the little jigsaw pieces were coming together. I knew it needed to be in the community. I knew we had to have a flagship. And then when that manager said that, I knew it needed to be owned by the community and not by the providers, because they have this thinking, this system way of thinking, this structured way of thinking, and they're governed by the policies, procedures. We have policies, procedures, but we make them work for us. We don't work to them; they work to us. So it was the final piece in the jigsaw that I thought, I need to do this because I'm a member of the community. I'm someone in recovery, so I need to do this separately from where I am. I actually left that employment and because I just felt passionate. So I was working with a job elsewhere, and then I was setting up the well on the weekend. So I was doing full-time work and then setting this project up, and we had no money. No one's going to fund this prolific ex-offender. I was a prolific offender. My record in terms of addiction and prison was just, it was just as long as my arm, if longer, my leg as well. So, and I had the name, The Well, because I looked at communities, I looked at villages, and in every village, if there's not a well, that where that source of power is, that water, where people need that water, people build villages around the source, the well, the water. And if they stray too far away from that source, that water, then they start to get weak and they could die. So they need to come back to the source and drink from the well. And that was the ethos I had, that the well will be a power emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically with our activities, that if you tap into this source, it will fill you up, it will fill your cup up and enable you to have a life beyond your wildest dreams. And that has been my desire, to enable people to have a life beyond the wildest dreams. And I had the vision, I had the heart, I had the passion, and I just thought, I'm just doing it. And no one gave me any money. So when I got my wages at the end of the month, I just paid for the first 3 months. I identified an asset within the community. And there was a community centre, and it weren't being used on a Saturday. So I approached the manager there and said, can I lease this building every Saturday for 4 hours and take responsibility? And he actually agreed. And he gave me the keys. I couldn't believe it. A Scouser, he's given keys to a Scouser and the alarm codes. But he did. And the rest is history, Dave. And that was 2012. I paid the rent for 3 months. And because I didn't have money, because I was thinking, how can this be sustainable? Because I can't keep paying me wages because I've got bills to pay at home and stuff like that. And so I thought everyone's going to have to pay £2.50 to get in. So I went to about 7 people and said, do you want to volunteer at this community centre, the Well? It's for people and families in recovery. And he said, yeah. I said, but there's a snag. And he said, what's that? And I said, you're going to have to pay £2.50 to volunteer. And luckily enough, they agreed. So myself and everyone else, we all chipped in £2.50. And it was just wiping its face. It was just getting by. And obviously, I'd thrown stuff in, community members. We used to bring like books, clothes, and we'd sell them in the Well. So in the hub, in the community centre, it had a 12-foot snooker table, it had pool tables, it had table tennis table, it had air hockey, it had a sports gym. So we were playing football, badminton, volleyball. It had a tennis court outside and grass. We were playing football on the grass. So we would start putting clothes and books on the snooker table and selling them just to raise the money. And I constituted it, and then with that constitution, I approached, a funder. I think we got £2,000 and then 5, and I thought, well, let's just open the doors. We paid the rent for the year and opened the doors for free then, and it just evolved in terms of what it is from me to now nearly 50 odd staff covering the Northwest, and one of the best and biggest lived experience recovery organisations in the UK. So it's just amazing.
Incredible wisdom from your journey and the vision that you had. I mean, it clicked. You knew that you had to meet people where they are, and they're out in the community. That asking folks to come to you for recovery, for treatment, for support is just another barrier, another challenge. And I could just hear the passion and the caring and the selfless service. As you said, you're willing to give up your Saturdays to go help people. And your manager at the time's like, no. What? Yeah. The Well, the concept, the ethos of the Well. You went through that pretty quick, but it was so elegant and beautiful and inspiring. Can you share that one more time for our listeners, the concept or the ethos that is the Well?
Yeah, the Well is we've all got lived experience of addiction, mental health, adverse childhood experiences, trauma, offending backgrounds, homeless, and we use that lived experience as an anchor, as a way of connecting people, a way of giving people hope, and we create an environment where people can recover, and we're all about being visible in the community and creating that visible, contagious recovery, because we have visible, contagious addiction. So people catch addiction, people catch offending. And so, when we look at in our streets and the most, deprived areas, and we see drug dealers selling drugs with nice trainees, nice cars, and our young kids are looking and going, bloody hell, I want some of that. Look at that. They've got this, I've got nothing. So it becomes attractive. But all the stuff that they don't share, the prison, the violence, loss of life, family members. That is all hidden. So we try and do the opposite and create that visible, contagious recovery, and what it is to be in recovery. That you will have your life back. You will get your family back. You will get your kids back. You will build the relationships with your family. You will be a part of a community. You will have meaning and purpose. You will have a sense of belonging through connection, and you will have that meaning and purpose in life that will help create the life beyond your wildest dreams. And that's what we offer people. When people come to us, we say, if you engage and follow what we do, that I've done, then we can promise you a life beyond your wildest dreams. And what does that life beyond your wildest dreams mean to you? And when we ask this question, people go, I just want to be drug free. I want my family back in my life. I want a job. I want a home. And just be a part of a community. And it breaks my heart, because everyone in society should have the right to have a roof over their head, to be a part and involved in their family, to have a job, and to belong to a community. They're God-given rights that we all should have. And we only sabotage that ourselves by the routes and the paths we've took. But what we do is create the core conditions in order for people to recover, to then have that life beyond the wildest dreams. And that's what we do, because everyone at the well has got that lived experience, including myself. As you said earlier, I had 25 years in addiction. I was brought up in the streets of Liverpool in one of the worst estates in Europe. It was classified in one of the local papers. I had a number of adverse childhood experiences. I like to call them adverse childhood traumas, because that's what they were. Sexual abuse, emotional abuse, violence. To me, I'm witnessing violence at a very young age. Witnessing, your mother being beat up on a daily basis, living in poverty, not really having the monies and the means to get what other kids had. So I believe they're the right conditions in order for people to have health problems, to fall into addiction, to fall into offending. We can create the right conditions, because it says, if you have 3 adverse childhood experiences or adverse childhood traumas, then you're more likely to go into offending, to fall into addiction, to have health-related issues. The evidence is there. You read the book "The Body Keeps the Score" by Van der Kolk. He shares this, and we know the evidence. So I'd come through a life from as early as I can remember. When I was 5 years old, my brother was 10, my sister was 4, and 3 armed robbers with knives burst through our front door and held us captive while they robbed the house, and the impact this has on us, and we wonder, why, biologically we don't develop, the same as someone who's brought up in a loving, nurtured environment. We don't develop emotionally the same. So, and by the age of 12, I started taking drugs. By the age of 16, I had my first prison sentence. I was out, I'd get released, and I'd be out 3 months or 6 months, and I'd be back in. And that went on for 20 years, just in and out of prison. And from the age of 16 to the age of 37, I spent more time in the prison system than I did in the community. I did not know how to function in society. I did not know how to function in the community. I knew how to function in prison. I knew how to function taking drugs, and I knew how to function, committing crime. That become my community. That become all I knew. I didn't have a driving license. I didn't have a passport. I'd never been abroad. I'd never been on a plane. I'd never had my own accommodation. I'd never even been involved. I think the most he had was a national insurance number, and nothing. I had a prison number, a national insurance number, and that's it. So how could I start to live a normal life when I don't even know what that is? When services said, come on, David, you need to get off these drugs. We're going to integrate you back into society. And I'd go, I don't know what you mean. I've never been a part of society to be integrated back into it. So how can you integrate me back into something I've never belonged? What is it to be a citizen? I don't know what a citizen means. I don't know what it is. So to actually live it is you're talking alien to me. I don't get what you're saying. So that just propelled me. That life I had, that inexperience of life, the expectations that I had of aspirations, was my biggest aspirations was committing a crime and getting loads of money, so I didn't have to commit crime anymore. They were my aspirations. We're going to university, college. I used to look out my window on some occasions on a Sunday afternoon, and I'd look out at people who were dressed going out with the kids, and it gets me emotional when I talk about this, because it's a really sad, not it's sad for me at the time when I'm looking back and reflect, but there's many people out there that look out the window and look at, a couple going past with the kids, or people going about the business, just normal, just going to shop, and I'd wonder, how do they do that? What sustains them in life? What is it? Because for me to do that, it feels like torture. Because I can't live with the mind I've got, because I've got a mind that tortures me. I've got a mind that tells me I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm unlovable, no one likes me, and I need to just stay away from that because I'm different, because there's something mentally wrong with me. And I look at that, and how do people have money and function, on a Sunday when everything else shuts down and everything else stops? And it was like watching the telly when I'd look out my window at people sometimes, and it's just unacceptable. And we need to really introduce people to society, introduce people to what it is to be a citizen, introduce people to be what it is to be a man. What is it to be a woman? What is it to be a member of a community? What is that? Because you can't say to someone who's been living with parents who have been taking drugs or abusing them mentally, emotionally, and the sexual abuse and the violence. How can you tell someone like that, who's been nurtured into that environment, to stop that and do something completely alien to them? We have to really re-educate and start undoing the things that have damaged them, because we can be healed, because I'm sitting here healed talking to you. So we know that there's a route out. And I believe what we've created at the Well is the core conditions for recovery. We've created the right conditions in order for people to get well. So, from, as I said, 16 to 37, I spent more time in the prison, and I got clean in prison. My last prison sentence was 4.5 years, and I was sent to a Lancaster Castle, as you said earlier, and we done a recovery program in there, an abstinence-based recovery program, and it was the best thing I've ever done. And since that time, I have never used a drug or alcohol since, and that's 17 years. Last month, 17 years. So that's something I'd never thought I'd achieve. And, when I think back on my life, because I am my own experiment, I am my own research paper, because I look at my process. I look at the thoughts I had when I was growing up. When we see people who have been sexually, emotionally abused, and the self-hatred they have about themselves, the self-loathing, when they're in relationships and someone says, I love you, and they go, oh yeah, I love you too, but deep down they're thinking, you don't love me. Because how can you love me if I don't love myself? It's hard to let someone love you when you don't love yourself. And it just makes me sad that there's people in our world, there's people in society that they don't think they're lovable. And that for me is unacceptable. And that for me motivates me to scream. I want to scream now. I want to scream from the rooftops. I want to kick doors in and say, no, you too can have a life beyond your wildest dreams. You too can look yourself in the mirror and say, I love and accept who I am today. And you will have the freedom of saying, I love and accept who I am today. Because take the drugs away. This is about me. I have a problem with me because I don't know how to live with me. I do not know how to function in society with me. So the first relationship I need to build is with me. I need to get on with me because you know what? I go wherever I go. So therefore, I best get on with me because it'll be a miserable journey if I don't. So we have to go internal and we have to look, and the further we go back, the more present we become because we become aware. And we start to see the assets. We start to see the strengths that are in us. And these are all the things why I created the well. And people ask me, what's different about the well? What is it that makes it different? And I believe we have created the core conditions for recovery. And, I've recently just published my book, Rat Hell to Rat Park, The Core Conditions for Recovery, a Manifesto of Change. And we've helped hundreds and hundreds of people, and we've helped hundreds and hundreds of people get abstinent who don't touch drugs, who are having a life beyond their wildest dreams. And all my places where I worked, I started to realise the environment we create, the conditions we create, will determine how people engage, how people feel, and how people contribute and get well. So, what do I mean by the title of Rat Hell to Rat Park? Well, in the 1970s, a professor called Bruce Alexander done an experiment with rats. And what he done is he built a rat hell and a rat park. In rat hell, he put cages inside cages and he put rats. And they were all isolated. He had nothing else, just this cage, and he put food, water and heroin. And then he built a rat park. And in Rat Park, he put males with females. He put swings. He put straw. He put, everything a rat could ever want and wish for in a rat park. And he put food, water, and heroin. The rats in Rat Hell took heroin to the brink of death. The rats in Rat Park barely touched the heroin and enjoyed the facilities. So he was thinking, okay, I wonder if it's just the rats themselves. These rats are just prone to take heroin. That's what because it's the drug, they've took it and that's it, they're hooked and they're the kind of people. So he took the rats from Rat Hell and he put them in Rat Park. He took the rats from Rat Park and put them in Rat Hell. The rats from Rat Park who went into Rat Hell took heroin to the brink of death. The rats that went from Rat Hell to Rat Park barely touched the heroin and started enjoying the facilities and drank the food and water. So that tells us we can create the right environment, the right conditions in order for people to take drugs or to recover. And what we created at the well is a rat park. We created 6 core conditions. 6 core conditions in order for people to get well. And this is within your staff team, within the organisation, and people to come in. We need lived experience. We get that identity from someone who's got lived experience. When I walked into prison and there was someone there who had took drugs with, who had took drugs and been to prison, been through trauma, and said, David, there's another way. I connected with him. So we needed lived experience, and the second condition is connection. We needed that connection. So through lived experience, we start building connections. We start building positive connections. And through them connections, we get meaning, a sense of belonging. And we start to feel a part of something. And then condition 3, we get meaning and purpose. Through that lived experience, through that connection, we get meaning and purpose in life. And we have a focus. We have a purpose of where we're going and what we want to do and our aspirations. We engage in meaningful activities. We engage with other peers within the recovering community. And then condition 4 is community. We start to belong and be a part of a community. And we start to get to know people. And when people let onto us in the street or when we walk in, they go, all right, Dave, we start to be in a community. But in that community in condition 5, it needs to be a trauma-safe environment. It needs to be safe. It needs to be unconditional positive regard. We need to have understanding, empathy with people. We need to know it's safe to talk about our issues, our abuse. We need to have be able to talk about our deepest, darkest secrets that we've had that keeps us locked. And it keeps us in the dark, and nothing grows in the dark, only crap. And condition 6, hope. Because if we haven't got hope, we are hopeless. Everyone in society needs hope for a better future, of achieving things, of overcoming things. And these 6 core conditions create that perfect environment, the core conditions to recovery. And if you look at Carl Rogers, who's the godfather of person-centered counselling, he talks about 3 core conditions: unconditional positive regard, congruence, and empathy. And he says, if these 3 core conditions are not present in the therapeutic environment, then that person can overcome the difficulties they present. So that's on a one-to-one, on a counselling service, on a person-centred counselling. How do we do that with communities? How do we do that with services? Well, we need the 6 core conditions, and we have the 6 core conditions at the well. And that has enabled us to save hundreds and hundreds of people. But I do go on, so please interrupt me.
I speechless, because there were 2 big points in what you just shared that made my eyes want to well up, because I was able to relate so much to my own journey as well. And I've got to thank you for being vulnerable and courageous, reflecting back on your own journey, those tough times, and being vulnerable with us, with our audience. I know that is not easy, and that does take courage. So thank you. And that story of looking out your window and seeing families going shopping with their children and feeling like you are so different that you can't have that kind of life, that made me want to tear up, because I remember when I was dealing with my traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, and drinking as a result of my combat deployment to Iraq, I felt very similar as well. And that, I don't know if you could see it through the camera, but it was like, oh, I got real tense, and that, and lastly too, I also got to tell you the looking inward as well, looking back on your past. And then the more you go farther you go back, the more present you can be. That was one of the biggest, I'll call it turning points or empowering moments there for me. Is I knew I had to brave the wilderness, and the wilderness is within. And the more I did that, as I started to reflect back, I actually had a journal. I still got it on my bookshelf where I just jotted down the story of my life and looked for common themes. Where did I naturally get pulled and put, and how did life guide me and direct me? And I saw those themes. That started to shift my thinking to that strengths-based approach. And when I got clarity on who I was, I then got clarity on, okay, now who do I want to be? And once I had that clarity, I got to work. But enough about me. But
no, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you gave me chills. You made my eyes want to, and so thank you.
It's so true what you're saying, because the saying, the further back you go, the more present you become, because we start to notice our communities. So the things we never noticed before, because we're so locked in ourselves, we never seen. And then suddenly you look up through that window and you don't see the people and think, how can I be? You start to see the beautiful sunset. You start to see the trees, and you start to embrace and think, wow, it's an all right place to be, isn't it? This is okay. I'm going again. I'm going again. But everyone needs to experience that. Everyone.
Before we hit record, I told you that I'm a morning person and I love catching the sunrises. I have hundreds of pictures of sunrises on my phone just because it's the awakening, a start of a new day, and just always trying to be intentional about pausing in that moment. We're gonna let's talk a little bit more about the well. What all do you guys offer? Do you have going on? I know you talked about the 6 core principles, but what are some of the services?
Okay, so first of all, we have a hub in our local communities, and the hub is somewhere where people, families can come together. They come to play, they come to engage through activities, pool, table tennis, snooker, or family games. It's a real safe environment for families, people in recovery, people who have suffered mental health and trauma. They all come together and connect, and it's a beautiful place, and I love it. And that Saturday afternoon, that first one that was opened for 4 hours, still is open today after 10 years this year. The well's been going, and you get up to 80, 90 people just coming in every Saturday, just bringing the kids and everything else. So that visible stuff still happens in the hubs within the community. We also have recovery housing, which is 24/7 wraparound support, abstinence-based housing. So we have over 60 beds across the northwest, and it's structured from 7:30 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. They stay in the properties, they have to look after themselves, they cook themselves, they manage the budget themselves. Then they come over to one of our hubs and do psychosocial structured programs, that behavioral change programs, looking at mental health, well-being, domestic violence perpetrators, and we look at job opportunities. We look at what it is to be a citizen, how we conduct ourselves in our environments, how we start to feel that we belong. So we have that housing model. We also work with drug-related death. So that's a commission piece of work where, sadly, within services, there's a number of variables that identify the most likely people to die within services, and there's a number of different reasons for that. The previous overdose, using alone, no meaningful peers around them. So we target these people using a lived experience approach and get alongside them and just support them. And this is more about their health and well-being at this stage of their journey. This is not about saying get abstinent. This is about getting them to a GP, a doctor. This is about, getting a roof over their heads, or getting some food in the belly, or, whatever their immediate needs are. And then, we continue to build that relationship with them where, we have people who have gone into abstinence-based recovery from that place. We also work with people with alcohol. So those people, brief interventions who could be, just over the threshold of normal, whatever normal drinking is. And we support them with brief interventions and help them engage in a wider recovering community. We also go into hospitals, so we do wards walk-rounds. We go into the hospital, go around the wards, people that have gone in with dual diagnosis, alcohol issues. We engage, we support, and then we support them back in the community and engage them into the wider recovering community. So for me, we're fertilising that soil, because we can support people within service, we can support people within hospitals and prisons, but when they come out of them places, how are they supported in the community? That soil that they're getting planted back in needs to be healthy, fertilised soil. Otherwise, they're going to die again and end up back in the services. So we do fertilise that soil with mutual aid groups and mutual support and just relationships. We also work in one of the prisons. So we do the psychosocial interventions, we do a 12-step abstinence program, and we do a methadone maintenance program, helping people to reduce and come into our abstinence model. And then we support people out the gate. We'll pick them up, engage them in the community, and link them in. And again, it's that support when they come through the services and in the community that they're sustained, and they feel that sense of belonging, and get that meaning and purpose in their journey. So there's some of the things we do. We also set up social enterprises. So we have social supermarkets. So what we mean, so we have food banks where we give free food away. But then there's a cohort of people that don't use food banks, still on the poverty line. They even have employment, but not enough to pay the bills and the food. But they won't walk into a food bank. So we source stock all over the UK, and we just put it in on the shelves like any other supermarket, but it's at a greatly reduced cost, less than half price. And they go in and they just purchase all brand stuff, and they purchase this stuff like any other shopper. And we have two of them now. One was so successful, we opened another one in another area. So we have them social supermarkets. We also have Spill the Beans, which is a coffee van where we take to events, or we'll just pitch up somewhere, put the well banners, and engage local community. Because people who are in poverty, they are associated with people who drink or take drugs. So we've become a source, a route to engage in our other services. So we find that is a route into getting the support they need in the community. So we are visible in the community. We build our service around the community. We don't build a community around the service, and that's what the well does.
I love it. I love it. You are being visible and being accessible and being supportive. I really, yes, I love it. I wish we had more time so we could dive into all the different services and offerings and routes you have available to folks, but time is slowly ticking away for this conversation. But I'm curious, what are some of the impacts that you've seen as a result of the well?
Oh, just amazing. We have one of the biggest recovering communities in the UK. Just people helping people. If you went on our website now, our Facebook page, the Well Communities, you'll see people just putting posts up. I'm 1 year clean today, thanks to the well and the support I have. There's just been two, one today and one yesterday, of people saying, I'm 1 year and 2 years. Um, one of the stories and the impacts, because I could give you case study after case study after case, because we've got so many people well, and then they get other people well, and it's that, contagion and touching others. But there was one person, like young girl, that sticks in my mind, and she was 21 at the time. It was a Sunday. And the thing with the well, a community doesn't shut its doors from 9 to 5. A community is a community. We're active like any other community. Excuse me. So one of the providers ended up ringing the well and said, "We've heard of a young girl who's in a house who's very vulnerable, and we're feared for her life." So we said, let's go round Sunday afternoon. The lads have, some of the staff, right, come out the house and gone round, and they walked into this young girl's flat. There was absolute rubbish and feces everywhere in the flat. There was a noose hanging from the door frame. She wanted to kill herself, and she was in there crying, no food, no nothing. And it's like, what are we going to do with this girl? She's in an absolute state. It's like, we can't tell her to come back Monday morning. She might be dead. She might be dead. So we said, we can't. We can't leave her here. So we picked that girl up, took her back to our services. We put her in one of our properties. There was no room for her, but we made a bed up on the couch. She got washed. All the girls, because we have women only houses as well. So all the girls give her some clothes, and we fed her. And we just supported her and give her the necessary things she needed to get through the day. Linked her in with the mental health services. She had a young child that was in care, and we just loved her. We just loved that person. She engaged in all our recovery support groups. And we loved that girl until she learned to love herself. And the biggest thing was, I was walking down the street 9 months later, and I seen this girl walking up the street, absolutely beautiful, holding a little baby's hand and walking up. And I just seen the grin, because she got a child back in her life. She got her own place. She's got a job. And she's like, I can't believe where I am today. I've got my baby, and that for me is just, that is why I do this stuff. That's why I continue to do this stuff. I want to see people have a life beyond your wildest dreams, because I know people are suffering out there. And, it's funny you said, it's not funny you said it at all, but, you suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And one of the things I've put in my book is, I believe there's a large majority of people in addiction who are suffering from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, if people have been through repeated sexual abuse, repeated violence, repeated emotional abuse, poverty, then you look at the consequences, and you look at the symptoms of complex post-traumatic disorder: self-hatred, disconnection from society, disconnection from yourself. That is me. It's talking about me. I walk around with a constant state of hypervigilance. I view the world as a scary place. I believe that people are out to get me. And we're presenting services with a drug problem. But yet, when we go in services with a problem, they look at the drug and say, what I'm going to do, because that drug has become my solution to my complex post-traumatic stress disorder, to me. So I have I take a drug and then it eases that pain. No longer do I care if I don't belong in society. I don't care because I've got drugs, so it doesn't matter. So then I present in a service, and what they do is come along and give a solution for my solution. So they give me a drug for the drug and say, there you go. But I'm saying, I'm still lost. I'm still broke. I don't feel like a part of society, because we need to address the core problem that sits within us. And I believe there's a lot of people within the drugs addiction service that suffer from complex post-traumatic stress disorder and they're undiagnosed, because we just think they have a drug problem, but the drug problem becomes the solution for them. So this, you could look at it as self-medicating. You know, when we look at pain, people self-medicate for pain. When we look at mental health, what come first, the drug or the mental health or the drug? What come first, the complex post-traumatic stress disorder or the drug? You know, we need to really look at this and we need to really evaluate our services and how we're supporting people, enable people to break free from crime and addiction.
And self-love, learning to love yourself, takes a lot of work. It takes work. You can't just flip a switch and turn it on. And even those that aren't an active addiction or recovery, just those without addiction can learn a lot from learning to truly love yourself and that self-love as well. So listeners, reflect on that a little bit, the art of self-love. But marvelous impacts. I can only begin to imagine the warmth you felt in your heart when you saw that gal walking down the street with her child back and living a life beyond her wildest dreams because you and your team made the choice to love her. Beautiful, beautiful. So we're running out of time. I feel like you and I could talk for hours and hours and hours. But as we start to bring this conversation to an end, I'd like to just touch on how can folks learn more about the well or about your story or those 6 core principles?
If people want to learn about me, the well, and the 6 core conditions, it's all in my book, Rat Out to Rat Park. The core conditions of recovery. People can, it's soon to come out on Amazon. It will be out next week on Amazon, but if people want a copy of the book before that, they can email book@thewell2.co.uk. That's BOOK at thewell number 2.co.uk. We will, you know, if you send the details, and we'll send you out a book. And you'll hear more about me, some of the thoughts that someone who's been through sexual abuse, emotional abuse, violence, some of them thoughts and processes a young child has to deal with. And then it gives you the question of, you know, if I was going through that, wouldn't I find a solution? Would that solution be drugs, gambling, sex addiction, work addiction, whatever it is? We're just trying to find a solution to a problem. So that's how people can find out.
I'll put that information, the email address, the links in the show notes, folks. And I've got 2 more questions for you before we wrap this up. So how can folks get connected to you, to the well, to the community?
So we have a website, The Well Communities. We have a Facebook page, The Well Communities. People connect with me on Facebook, Dave Higham, and I can link it into the Facebook we're updating things every day about what we're doing, the activities we're doing, and some of the joys we're enjoying, and the fruits of recovery. So people can use them 2 avenues.
Marvelous. And the last one, some say it's a big question, but if you were to tell our listeners, if you're going to remember one thing from this podcast episode, remember this, what would that be?
What would that be? For me, it'd be, look at a child growing up at the age of 1, 2, 3. They witness the mother being booted down the stairs. She's got blood all over her face. She's crying. The dad shouting with rage. That child who's being beat up, punched, hit with sticks, weapons, where they're not told they're loved, not cuddled, where maybe the mum and dad are taking drugs or drinking or in prison, and this is that child's life. And then when we see someone in addiction, try and connect the two. And instead of judging someone who's been in addiction, instead of judging someone who's been in prison, try and put yourself in their shoes and say, if I'd been through what that person had been through, wouldn't I take drugs just in order to cope? Just one of them things, never mind sexual abuse, never mind adding on top of that the physical abuse, never mind adding on top of that the emotional abuse, never mind adding on top of that the neglect, never mind adding on top of that you weren't nurtured and loved and cuddled. Put yourself in their shoes and say, wouldn't I take drugs or drink or take some sort of drug to help overcome the things I was living with? And then we just might open our heart and have empathy for people in addiction in the prison system. And then we might be able to create safer environments for people to recover. That's what I'd like people to take away.
And I am not going to add anything to that. Listeners, you heard him. Check out the show notes for the links to get connected, to be inspired by the amazing work that Dave and his team at The Well are doing. Dave, incredible, remarkable, and thank you for being brave, being bold, and being visible for the community, and the community being the world. Thank you very much. It's been an honor.
Thank you, and thanks for asking.
That concludes this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this episode with a friend before you leave. And we look forward to seeing you on social media, because prevention is better together. Together, we are stronger.